this whole process in our universe, the whole story of our universe, can be logically analyzed. And four phases is, in my view, the first step in that analysis. Think about that for a moment. Think about what kind of a tool we have. We have found the logic of the universe. Hello fellow sign lovers. I wanted to make this video about the four phases. Now, I have already written quite extensively about the four phases in my Substack, so be sure to check that out. But I also wanted to make a video, sort of a general overview to the four phases to accompany the texts or posts in Substack. So, what are the four phases? The four phases can be thought as a cognitive tool, a thinking tool. Some may say psychotechnology, although I hesitate with that term, although it sounds quite cool. So psychotechnology, it helps us to conceptualize, to analyze, and to understand our experience, and also, the universe, everything that is in the universe. It is not by no means limited to our human minds or human consciousness. It encompasses all of the universe. It can be used to analyze whatever you will. So it's a very powerful tool. But before we go to the four phases themselves, I think it's quite important to understand what we're actually doing. What are we talking about with the four phases? And this is something that I wanted to point out in my first text, the Semiotics 1 in Substack, is that it's about the semiotic mindset. We have to adopt a semiotic worldview, semiotic metaphysics, and what I call the semiotic mindset before we can really even use this thinking tool. I think it's necessary. So it requires this kind of metaphysical step before you can even use the tool. So the tool, what we are doing with the tool is that we must first say, and this is the metaphysical step, that reality or the universe is semiosis, is action of signs. The universe is a sign or a sign action. And this is quite a step. This is a very paradigm shift in our thinking in many ways, because we are not conceptualizing, we are not understanding the universe as being semiosis. That's a very foreign term for almost all of us. We don't know what that means, so it's a very difficult step to even take if you don't know what it means. But it also it requires a completely different mindset. That's why I call it the semiotic mindset. So, just to name a couple of things, by taking this view, you will view that the universe, the most fundamental nature of the universe is mind, not matter, but mind. That physical laws, or the laws, what we call the laws of physics, are actually habits of this universal mind. So it sounds very foreign to us, but this is something that you must presuppose in order to use this tool. So it's a change from sort of a materialistic, even deterministic worldview to our realistic worldview, where we take this kind of extreme realist stance towards the universe, where we say that signs are real, ideas are real, representations are real, purposes are real, meaning is real, and even that love, evolutionary love, or agape, is real. So normally we are used to say that those things are somewhat human-made. They are things that human minds impose on the materialistic or the material nature of the universe. You know, the universe doesn't care. That may be true, but the universe, in a certain sense, is dead. It's matter. It doesn't have a mind. There is no there's no meaning. There is no purpose. It is just this kind of mindless, meaningless process, and we humans have to cope with that. And in order to cope with that, we come up with ideas like, you know, meaning and purpose and love and kindness and stuff like that. With the semiotic mindset, we say, no, those things are real. There is real meaning. There is real purpose. And it is a shift to the view that we as human beings, we do not create, we discover. So we don't create ideas, we don't create these meanings or purposes, we discover these ideas, we discover these meaning and purposes which were already there to be realized. So it's a different kind of mindset. That's what I'm saying. And you know, I can talk about this, but it takes time to adapt this worldview. It takes time to adapt this semiotic mindset. It's not by no means an easy task. It requires courage, and it requires faith and hope and love. It requires, you must have faith in this kind of worldview, because there is, I believe these kinds of questions or ideas or beliefs are such that we can never, you know, show that they are empirically true. You know, they are not in contradiction with the empirical reality, but these empirical data can be conceptualized in many different ways, you know. For example, if I say that everything that humans do is for selfish reasons, now, how you say something that would, you know, refute that view? There is nothing you can say, because I can always say that everything that you do is for selfish reasons. What about helping other people? What about altruistic behavior? Well, that makes you feel good, so that's selfish, and so on. You know, this is just an example of sort of an idea that can never be refuted, in a sense. We must just choose some kind of a mindset or some kind of a stance towards the universe. You could believe that universe is material, or that is the only reality there is, that everything is just matter, and mind is an illusion. This is quite a common view, for example. And you may believe that, you know. I don't know if we can ever, you know, show ultimately that is wrong. Well, obviously, I think there are many reasons to be doubtful of that kind of worldview. But the point I'm trying to make, I cannot argue you to adopt the semiotic mindset. There is nothing, I believe, there is no sort of a logical argumentation that I could show you in order to pursue you to adopt this view. You must choose this worldview. That is something that must be intriguing to you. That is something that, you know, calls you to adopt this worldview, and at least that is my experience with this stuff. You know. What I'm trying to say here is that the step into this semiotic worldview is nothing but it's not simple. That's the point I'm trying to make. You know, it's not simple. It's not easy. It requires work. It requires time, and it requires contemplation and meditation, and there is lot of things that change. I just hinted at a couple of things, but there are many things. But I will be writing about these things in Substack. I will post in videos about these things in YouTube. And if you have, questions about these things, it would be very interesting if you would share your experience with this kind of thinking, because I think that is something that is very lacking at the moment, is sort of sharing the experience of what it is like to think semiotically, what it is like to adopt this kind of a semiotic mindset, because it's a transformative process. You see the world differently, and when you see the world differently, you will act differently. It will change you. This sounds like some kind of a new age stuff, but basically this is quite common sense. If you see the world in a certain way, it will change your behavior. Philosophy, we are used to think that philosophy is something very abstract and something very detached from our everyday life. And in a certain sense, it is. We don't contemplate philosophical things in our everyday life. At least normal people don't. But nevertheless, these kind of philosophical stances or doctrines or worldviews, they are there at the background. We're not maybe consciously aware of these things, but they are there in the background, sort of the zeitgeist of our times. We have a material culture. We are obsessed with matter. We are obsessed with desires, passion, and stuff like that. And there is philosophical reasons for this. This is not something that just comes, falls down from heaven. There is a philosophical background to this. There's a philosophical story, a narrative, how we got here. And this is one of the things that has been always one of my big interests. Maybe some of you don't know this, but I'm a sociologist. My background is in sociology. But I sort of moved there on the border between philosophy and sociology. So the big question for me, the big interest for me has always been how these quite abstract and detached philosophical doctrines and ideas materialize, or how they can be practically seen in our society. How the stuff that what Descartes said can be seen today in our society, in our everyday life. It's a very interesting question, in my opinion, to find this thread connecting the very practical everyday life with these abstract philosophical debates. We're running on tangents here, but I think it's okay. To go back to the four phases, as already discussed, we have to adopt the semiotic mindset, the semiotic worldview, the semiotic metaphysics, which requires courage and time. Now we've done that. We are convinced, or we believe that the world is a sign. The world at its most fundamental level is semiosis. That is the process that is unfolding now. The story of the universe is the story of the semiosis of this universe. It's the same thing. What's happening here, this process, everything around us is semiosis, this action of science. Okay? This is sort of our presupposition for all of this. Now, what is that semiosis? What is that sign action? And here the real magic begins, because sign, what is a sign? Sign is a logical thing. It's a logical entity. It doesn't have to exist. Its most fundamental being is not about matter or embodiment. It's a logical entity, which means that it has structure. It can be logically analyzed. Sign action, therefore, is also logical. If this is so, this leads us to very, very powerful possibilities. Namely, that this whole process in our universe, the whole story of our universe, can be logically analyzed. Every aspect of it, everything in it, can be logically analyzed. And 4 phases is, in my view, the first step in that analysis. We can divide the development, the growth of semiosis into 4 distinct phases. So that's like the first step in breaking down, logically breaking down the structure of semiosis. Now, all this kind of, and semiotics is a logic. Semiotics is a logic. That's a very important point. And what semiotics is doing, it is breaking down that logic. It's searching for that logic. How is this semiosis working? What's going on? What kind of structures? What kind of phases? What kind of paths? What kind of relations it has? That's what semiotics is doing. Now, Peirce tried to form this logic, or to complete this logic, to find the most detailed version of this logic. But he never was able to do that. Whereas Vinicius Romanini, a professor from the University of Sao Paulo, which has been on this channel a couple of times and will be also in the future, completed that logic. Completed the logic. Now, he didn't just complete any logic. Remember, if we take the semiotic worldview, the semiotic mindset, and furthermore, this is a presupposition of my work, is that Romanini completed that logic, we have now the completed logic of the universe. Think about that for a moment. Think about what kind of a tool we have. We have found the logic of the universe. You could think about it as the programming language of the universe almost. That's astonishing. That's just completely unbelievable. In my opinion, I truly believe that. Now, that logic of Romanini's is very minute. It finds all the 66 signs of reality. 66 signs. Now that's a very minute thing to remember. 66 things and all of their relations and all of these kind of more general categories above that. So that's a very difficult task to understand, the complete logic. And this is what I do in my channel. I want to break that complete logic down and form this kind of intermediate phases, sort of a more general tools. As an analogy, if you think that, if you see that this Romanini's logic of 66 signs is like the electron microscope, like the most powerful microscope there is. You can see very, very minute things with it. It's cool. It's a breakthrough thing. It's a magnificent tool. But if you want to look at, let's say, an insect or something, you need something that is a bit less powerful. You need some kind of a microscope or some kind of a, a microscope, but not something that is so powerful as this magnificent electron microscope. I believe it's English. I don't know, but you get the point. We need various intermediate kinds of tools. Everything cannot be done functionally with the most powerful tool. Sometimes we need something, a bit more crude. And that's what I'm doing. And the 4 phases is like the crudest, crudest tool there is, because we just divide it in 4. 4 phases, 4 things to remember. It's very much manageable, but still it's very enlightening because we are speaking about the logic of the universe. That's something that you would certainly like to learn. The logic of the universe. But we begin with the 4 phases. And there is another thing that's very good in the 4 phases. And that is the fact that semiotics uses very weird language, very weird concepts, foreign terms, stuff like that, PhiloSigns, dynamic object, immediate interpretant, final interpretant, legisign, and stuff like that. Nobody knows what a legisign means. That's a very weird term, but that's a semiotic term. Now, with the 4 phases, we don't have to adapt any kind of that kind of weird language. And that is very important. Of course, when our tools become more minute, more refined, we have to slowly adapt this kind of semiotic language. But I believe it's very important that in the first couple of steps, we can use language that we all understand. But that's like the mission for the current moment in this channel, what I'm doing. I want to share this work that I've done. I want to share these ideas. I believe they are very insightful things, very useful things, and very underdeveloped things. And the most important thing is that semiotics is a logic. And there are all sorts of logics out there. And the only way to be sure of, we can never be sure, but the only way to test this logic is to apply it. Now, the more we apply it, the more it develops. And so I want to share these kinds of a little bit crude tools that, they're still magnificent. But they're not as minute, but I don't think, that doesn't make, okay, I want to be clear here, that doesn't make them less of a tool. That doesn't make them, worse tools. Every job needs a tool accordingly. They are just as good as the full minute logic of 66 signs, just to be clear. They are easier to adopt. These kind of easier logics, speaking about the 4 phases, it's easier to adopt. It's easier to learn. It's easier to understand, and it's easier to apply. So that's why I want to, make these simple tools for you. And I would be very interested to hear your experience about how it is to apply these tools, where the problems lie, what things remain unclear, because I have been thinking about these things for so many years that I'm become blind to how these are understood by others who maybe hear from these things for the first time. So that's impossible to me to understand that experience anymore. So it's very important that you would share your experiences with these tools so that we could further refine this process pedagogically, which is something that I think is almost completely missing from PERS scholarship. Now, there are not a lot of people who want to or who have the mission to teach about PERS to the wider public, but there has been almost no kind of pedagogical conversations about how should we teach PERS. And this is one of the reasons why I chose these 4 phases. I think this is a very good place to start. And I have my series on the 10 genuine signs, but I don't think that's the best way to start. Maybe I say a couple of things about this. 4 phases is a much better place to start than the 10 genuine signs. Why? Well, with the 10 genuine signs, you will immediately be in contact with all these weird terms, these neologisms, these completely foreign things like glitchy signs and icons and sin signs and remas, disi signs, stuff like that. You have no idea what these are. Then you must immediately bring about the categories of PERS, firstness, secondness, thirdness, which are very hard to understand because they are so general. They are just so comprehensive things that they are very hard to, to come by, to learn, and to embody in your thinking. So there is a lot of things that stand in the way of being able to apply something like the 10 genuine signs of PERS. Whereas the 4 phases, it's just 4 things. It's just 4 things. There's a lot more to be said, this is just scratching the surface, but this video is quite long already. So I hope to see you in the next video. Remember to subscribe the Substack and Twitter. Follow me on Twitter, and yeah, I wish you good sign hunting.